Hello, thank you for tuning in. Today, our discussion is going to be about tackling this myth, which is called there isn't enough top talents from underrepresented backgrounds and we have trouble finding them. We're going to be talking about why your team might be feeling this way, and we're going to get down to the practical level. Do keep in mind, this is going to be from the recruitment cycle standpoint. We're not necessarily diving into the employer branding perspective. The first reason why organizations have trouble finding top talents from underrepresented backgrounds is that their sourcing strategy is completely off. When you look at how a lot of the organizations operate their recruitment and so forth, what happens is that they are heavily relying on referrals or on job boards. And they are using the same job boards as everyone else. They are using the same LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster. They're using their own ATS. But you have to realize that if you're looking for people that are different from whoever's already in the organization, and whatever you're doing is consistently getting you the people with the similar backgrounds, then that might be a sign that you need to adjust that a little bit and think of a different avenue to reach out to different people. It's kind of like how when people try to broaden their social circle, you're suggested go out to different events, go out to different kinds of social circles. The same principle should be applying in your sourcing strategy. Niche specific job boards could be one of the ways you can go about doing it. Or you take a little bit of a different approach when it comes to sourcing. Let's say using a different social media platform. If you want more women in your organization, maybe you end up going to Pinterest, because Pinterest is a little bit more woman driven than a lot of other social media platforms. Just like how you'll be creating different set of social circle and diving into different events as you would in personal relationship, the same principle should be applying. And if you're not applying the same principle, well, you can't be wondering, oh, why can't we find these people? Simple as that. The second factor that you should be considering if you are having trouble finding top talents from underrepresented backgrounds is your assessment within the recruitment. And I do hope I am not being misinterpreted. So when we say assessment, a lot of the organizations, they are aware that sourcing is where a lot of this recruitment cycle begins, and they are making conscious efforts to really create creative sourcing techniques, and they're really experimenting with how they're communicating with the top talents. However, they don't really take a look at the assessment. I'm gonna let that sit for a second. You can't compare apples to oranges. Let's say you are bringing in someone who is neurodivergent. Someone that is neurodivergent, they have excellent intelligence quotient, spatial intelligence, but they might necessarily not be super social. Or there might be certain aspects that they might be lacking that they are making up with some of the other factors that are considered as their strengths. Yes, it is great to have standardized assessment. However, you need to know where these variables must be accounted for. So for example, let's say you want them to have an MBA from Ivy League University, and that's your requirement, but someone that you're looking to get more representation of is First Nations. Maybe they do have an MBA, they did go to a comparable university that is just as respectable, but they're not Harvard graduates, so you decide to write them off because that's what your assessment procedure says. So even though your sourcers might be bringing in these talents from slightly different backgrounds, from the assessment perspective, you're essentially designing it to weed them out. And if that is the case, you cannot be wondering, why aren't we getting these top talents? It's because they are not even able to step into the door to beginning, because you're not accounting for their differences, but also realizing even though they have their differences, There are strengths in a lot of different areas that should be holistically measured, and making sure that your assessment accounts for these different strengths and different weaknesses, and also really trying to understand the candidate beyond the papers. So that's gonna be the second factor. Third factor that you should be aware of is cultural fit versus cultural addition. If you're tuning into this discussion, this means that you are already aware of the importance of having a talent pipeline of people with diverse backgrounds, whether that means more women in leadership, neurodivergent people, Asian Pacific Islanders, Black, Brown, or LGBTQA, all of the people of very different backgrounds. If you see a value in that, that means that when you're assessing for culture, you cannot be basing it off on cultural fit. That means that in your culture assessment for this particular candidate, after we do the whole skills and soft skills, potential within the organization, their dedication, and do they have the prerequisites to be able to succeed in this job, you need to be asking from the perspective of what can they bring to the table that is not already in the organization, and create that synergy effect. And how is their difference going to be celebrated in the organization? And how is their difference going to make the organization better? What are they bringing to the table because of their difference? And even though it's in the human nature to want to go for something similar, if you're looking for talents of underrepresented backgrounds and you want to add in that diversity and innovation within your organization, and within your talent pipeline, keeping it the same approach isn't exactly going to work. You have to continue to innovate. You're already doing that within the market, so we just have to make sure that it's translating to how you're building the talent pipeline. Those are the three factors. Number one, the sourcing strategy is completely off. Number two, the assessment is weeding them out. And number three, not coming from the place of how can their difference contribute to what we already have. If you found a lot of value in this discussion, please share it with your team members and your peers who could use the nuggets from this. If you do need further help strengthening your talent pipeline in a way where it creates hype for your organization and report with your top talents, contact us at allennials@work.com. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.